Well, welcome not only to Raith TV, but welcome to Raith Rovers Football Club. We've had a wee bit of a chance to have an introduction ourselves, but far more important than ourselves, there's a squad of supporters out there who'll see a face, who'll want to know what the name is, who'll want to know what the role is. Can you give an introduction to what your role is here?
Yeah, so my name's Bill Orr, so I've just joined recently, probably about 4 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago officially. So I'll be heading up performance analysis and talent ID. So there'll probably be 4 pillars that I'll work under. First pillar's talent ID, so we don't really, or there's historically not been a lot of sort of talent ID structure. So it's really to upscale that from the ground up, make sure we're covered in all areas to assess local talent, the wider talent, UK talent, doing all that aspect of managing the scouts and the reports that come back. The second pillar will be performance analysis, so everything that we do, post-match, pre-match, in-game, that sort of stuff. Third part would probably be data, so all the information that we get through various external companies like Y-Scout, all the data that's coming in through the scouts is really building that infrastructure and the pipeline of what that looks like for Raith Rovers. And then the fourth is probably technical coaching, so working with the existing stable of players that we've got, how do we make them better? So working with individual players one-to-one, working with the units, set pieces for instance, having a lot of input into the set pieces and helping on that aspect as well.
Let's look at these kind of in turn there, because in what way will that enhance what we've already got? And what's your background? What skill set do you bring from your own learning?
So last year I was assistant manager at East Kilbride in the Lowland League. Prior to that I've worked in similar roles at Stirling Albion and Queen's Park prior to that. The benefits I think is really getting up to speed with the other teams in the league. You know, we really don't have that infrastructure just now. We've got small parts of it, but we want to be a best in class now, so we really want to upscale those departments to make sure the decision making and transfers on tactical inputs and all that is we've got all the information that we need to do to make the best decision out there.
What is it about Raith Rovers that's such a big draw for you? You seem really enthused. We had a wee chat after the game at Montrose and we've been swapping messages setting up this session here, and I'd really get from you that there's a buzz about the notion that you're actually here at Starks Park. Yeah,
I'm fortunate that I'm coming into the club at a time of change, and when you walk about the stadium for instance, you see there's not a room that's not getting done up. You know, there's a lot of new people come into Raith as we sort of look to upscale our operations, but there's a real buzz. You know, I was at the last 2 or 3 games, just sitting in the stand watching the games, and you could feel the buzz around the stadium. You know, last season was challenging at times, but I felt the supporters were great. You know, just being in the stand amongst them, there wasn't a lot of negativity there. You know, so you know you can feel that it's a real community club. It's stuff that I've felt at previous clubs, you know, like Stirling Albion, but this is a different scale really.
Talk to me a wee bit about technology. Us supporters on the sidelines, we dabble in the Y-Scouts and the Spideos and so forth. We know what the role is, but how does that practically work out there in the field? I think
a big part of my role is there's a lot of tech, there's a lot of information out there. It's really streamlining that pipeline into something that's consumable for the coaching staff, the rest of the coaching staff, and to filter out a lot of that stuff that can get things a bit too complex. You know, one thing I do come from a coaching background. You know, it's a lot of times people can be too data heavy. We don't want to be that. If we're looking at talent ID for instance, you've got a scout that may see 5 or 6 games, but really that is what most teams in the championship down in Scotland do. What we want to do is sort of assess the data for what they've done for the other 200 games, and really does that marry up? Are things showing what they're good at, what they're bad at? And again, it's just really to give the gaffer as much true information that we feel is relevant for him to make that decision of whether we go for a player or whether we don't, whether, you know, there's certain situations like aerial Jules, for instance, you know, the eye might tell you one thing, data tells you the other thing. My job's just to sort of marry that together and make it consumable.
It's really interesting because you can often go to a game, sit beside someone, speak for 90 minutes, and you both leave with a completely different perspective on the same player. Is that the kind of the fan's eye view of what you're looking to do?
Definitely, and I think it's also sort of marrying the two areas up. So it's whatever a scout sees and whatever the data sees, the perfect promised land is both those marry up completely. You know, it's the same thing in both parts. But really, what happens if there is anything that's different is we need to evaluate that more, and we need to assess it more. So it just adds that structure around that decision making, where in essence we're trying to alleviate risk really from any of the decisions that we make.
It's really interesting to hear about this kind of balance between modernity and tradition. Having commentated and spent a lot of time with Brian, who produces the reports, and it's fascinating when you actually see what a scouting report looks like. It's something that not many supporters actually get to see. Is that the promised land of having the balance of streamlined technology, but also the eye of somebody where knowledge of the game?
Definitely, you know, we'll never just use the scouts, and we'll never just use data. It'll all be the scouts, and the data aspect will work hand in glove really alongside each other. So scouts can generate targets, for instance, but we'll assess them through data. Data will assess targets. The scouts then need to sort of make sure that marries up.
Is there a kind of eye that you have on, for example, the performance last year and the amount of goals that we lost for set pieces? It's not being disparaging. It's a kind of open bit of knowledge in the footballing world. Is that an example of where you take technology and actually say, how do we become more ruthless, not only on the park but in our recruitment off the park? Yeah,
and although we're using technology, there'll be a lot of sort of people on the end of that technology. So again, one of my certainly the last couple of weeks since I've been in is really sort of building the groundwork for how we change set pieces. And again, Potts, the technical director's heavily involved, Mickey and the gaffer are heavily involved, but really sort of lessons learned of what we've done wrong last year and how we can sort of rectify that going forward. Again, there'll be tactical stuff, but there's always recruitment as well. We're aware, you know, we want a different type of player or different attributes to what was available last season, so really we want to grow that out. But again, what my role is sort of constantly working with the players throughout the season on that. So if we are seeing something, we're not reactive, we're proactive with it.
Tell us about the internal mechanisms here at the club. You know, it's as you say, everything's up for debate, discussion and evolution, you know, from the building works to the role of probably everybody involved in the club. I think the question is, how do you either step forward and improve what you're doing, or actually how do we help you to enhance what you're doing? So that's what I'm hearing in this description here. How did your work balance from the dugout to the top tier that John Potter's working with?
Myself and Potts will probably work more closer together than anyone else, because there's multiple areas that I'll sit under. But I'll be visible in the dugout, you know, when there's corners or set pieces, you'll see me with Mickey working through that. You know, we'll be mic'd up to people in the stand that we can clip and we can sort of assess more in the moment. You know, we're looking at sort of getting live feeds for key incidents for away games. You know, again, it's marrying sort of, or it's giving the right tools at the right time for us to make sort of better decisions.
And that's decisions across the spread of the club, but what's really interesting for me is what you're talking about is in-game decisions.
Yeah, in-game decisions. Again, there's things that happen, and the dugout's not always the best view at times. You know, it can be obstructed. So how do we sort of replay that information back to the gaffer and Mickey to make those decisions?
We smile back as supporters, probably at this time of the calendar year where you know, every manager that I've sat opposite tells me, goodness, I could waste about 5 days of my life watching YouTube clips that I get sent from every agent across the globe. What it sounds is we're evolving way past that kind of position in terms of talent ID. Have you always got a pipeline? Is that the dream that we're actually going to reach a point where you've actually got an eye on who we're looking to bring in next season?
Definitely, and that work's already started. We've been very proactive the past month in that, and sort of setting up the structure to do that going forward. You know, what again my role will be is to act as a buffer for a lot of that information that comes through and really put the quality data and the quality targets towards Potts and the gaffer and that to start to assess. They'll generate their own targets that we'll use that talent ID process for, but really, you know, we want to upscale. I think that's the message. You know, right now it's very much been very, very small, probably I would say one of the smallest in the Championship, but really we want to sort of upscale and get moving on that.
I'm interested in a bit about how you make players that we've got better, because I guess that the mantra from the coaching staff and through your own work is actually there'll be nowhere to hide, but actually if you want to be a better football player, we're the right place to be. So does your work also lay a foundation then for reaching out to players to say, you want to improve, this is a place to come?
Yeah, definitely, and one of the things we will be doing is spending more time with the players sort of individually and as the units, whereas again, just with the resource that was available last year, that just wasn't there. But having like myself and Potts in place really provides the players with an opportunity for them to even drive what they want to get better at, and we can lead them along the way.
We see how well monitored players are on the pitch now, but I guess that data is only useful if you've got somebody kind of unpicking and looking for themes in it. Otherwise, it's just a pile of useless numbers.
Definitely. And again, I would sort of emphasise it will not all be sort of data driven. There'll be the players that will feel things in games that we really want to sort of echo and get an understanding of and grow or rectify. You know, even when we're looking at set pieces, you know, how do we structure that information I've given them through the week? Do we taper it in different ways? People learn differently. More people are visual. Some people like written stuff. You know, we'll mix everything to, again, just try and get the best out of the players and be a best in class.
What about the notion of working directly with the players? Will you have a role in terms of sitting down, looking at stats, looking at detail, one-to-one? You know, I'm always quite fascinated when I look at sometimes round about the stadium and I open a door and there's a group of players sitting looking at a PowerPoint for their match analysis, and I quickly feel I'm in the wrong place. Those big sessions, is that something that you would be leading?
Yeah, definitely, and we'll be doing a lot of unit work as well. We'll be sort of monitoring everything that the players do and highlighting to them what we think they can get better at, but also what they're doing well that we want to see more of. But again, it's more a longer period that we want to sort of grow the players. Again, you know, we have got a good stable of players, and there's a lot of room for players to improve in that, and there's a lot of appetite there. When I speak to players, you know, they want to get better, they want to spend time sort of looking at their golf swing, for instance, you know, because sometimes that's what they feel during the game and what people see is a little bit different. So it's getting an understanding of the decisions that they make in those scenarios and how we can slightly tweak those to maximise their outputs.
One of the really interesting parts of your job, just as we were kind of chatting pre-set-up here and we were kind of looking to see how Raith TV could help you, you know, widen the angles, etc. that you've got, we'd be keen to help there. But I was interested when you were saying about you'll be able to do work that's about injury analysis, looking at what happened before an injury, looking at what happened after, making sure that surgeons and specialists have got the data. It's a bit of your role that I hadn't quite tuned into. Can you tell us a bit about that? Yeah,
so it's linking in with sort of Lorne and the sort of medical department that we've used it previously, or I've used it previously at other clubs, that when there's been an injury or it's been an impact during a game or training, we can pull that footage and have that with them when they're going to see a specialist for a scan, so that, again, providing the most information possible for them to get assessed.
What excites you most about your role here?
The potential that the club's got, but also the tools that the club are giving me to really upscale all these departments. The gaffer's really into it. Mickey's very responsive as well. I'll be working closely with Potts to really upscale sort of everything that you see in the sort of back room of the football department.
It's going to be quite fascinating to see how that develops across the competitive season. We're not far away from that, but the notion of the manager sitting down with all of this data, both from the eye and from the stats, looking at having you know, delivered a whole set of videos to see where we can see potential weaknesses and seeing how that evolves. Yep. What we see as supporters in front of us, it's going to be a fascinating journey. We're looking forward to it.
Perfect.